I'm going to drag this into Photoshop, or excuse me, not Photoshop, drag it into Illustrator and just let it make its own document from here. Once it's in here, works as a regular picture on that size. It really doesn't matter what size it is, height and width, we're going to vectorize it eventually. To quickly vectorize, what do we click on? Image trace, up here at the top. So I've got selected, we'll do image trace. It is a large image, but we'll say okay to that. Give it a second to think. And here's what it comes out to be. Remember, it's only going to be in black and white, and that's what we're going to work with for now. If I wanted to pick up some of the lighter areas that I've lost, what do I need to click on? The Properties palette, which is this icon here. Here's our properties. And remember, we can use our threshold to make the image a little bit lighter. Give it a second to think. Of course, I'll lose the lighter areas, but I'll pick up some details in the darker. Or if I wanted, I could make it darker and we'll pick up some of the lost brushes over here. And there they are back there. You may want to do this a couple of different times. Some of these you may want to have more detailed than others. But for now, I'm just going to keep it exactly the same. I like the way each one of these looks. Once I'm done this, the last thing I need to do is to click Expand. This way I can see my individual vector points, because Illustrator is going to use those vector points to actually make the brush I'm working with. As with the other one, now I'll drag this off to the edge to show you, I need to get rid of the white area, the white background from here. Before, what did we do to select the white area? How did we do that? Yeah, we used the white arrow, we selected the white, select the same fill color, and delete it away. Pretty cool? I just realized there's an even faster way of doing something. So I'm going to back up and I'm going to show you a quicker way, quicker method. I'm going to undo just before I hit Expand. So we'll re-image trace this. I'm back in image trace mode. One of the options for image trace mode, if I open up my advanced things, is to ignore white. And if I hit ignore white, I'll give it a second to think, it'll treat the white as if it's a transparent image by itself. You see, it automatically got rid of that. And sometimes that comes in handy. Do y'all see where I've picked that up? And here under advanced, ignore white is what you want to work with. Now when I expand it, that kind of saves me a step from having to recreate or to select all the white areas from here. They are still grouped together, so I need to go to Object and ungroup them so that I can actually click on the individual lines that I want to work with. Okay, here comes the magic part. Let's move this out to the side. From here, it's simply a matter of selecting the lines that I want to work with and vectorizing them and turn them into the brush that I like. Let's say I like this one. I'm going to pull this one off to the side. Drag it over here. I have it selected. I'm going to open up my brushes palette again. At the bottom right-hand side, I can make a new brush, and the kind of brush that we're going to be making is an art brush. When I say OK, this will open up all of the options for my art brush. And you can see on step 3 how I want you to create and save this particular brush by itself. By now, you can keep everything exactly the same, but here's the most important part. Pay attention to the direction that it's moving. You can see I've got a little blue arrow. This would be the starting point and the stopping point. And so make sure if I'm dragging, this would be the start of my line all the way down to the end of my line. And I can reverse that, but I definitely don't want it to do something like this. That wouldn't give me the results that I want. So we'll keep it like this. One other thing to change is the color of it. If I wanted to change the color, if I was to use this now, it would always stay black, regardless what color I have. But if I change my color method to tints, I think we figured that that was the best one to work with. Excuse me? Okay. Thank you. We'll say okay. Once I hit okay, here's my new brush. I've got it loaded into my brushes palette. Let's play around with it and see what we can get. I'll draw off a couple of lines, It's a regular line. When I apply my brush to it, that's what it looks like. Pretty cool. And I can reuse it over and over again. Since I'm working with my pencil tool, hang on a second, let's just get this. Since I'm working with my pencil tool, it doesn't automatically apply. If I use my paintbrush tool, it'll automatically apply it as well. So there's one brush. Let's make some more brushes. Let's have some even more fun. Let's try one of this one right here. So this one looks good. We'll drag it off. I've got it created. Make a new one. Remember, it's an art brush. This all looks good, but I do need to change my colorization mode. Let's test our color to make sure that this one works. So I've got it drawn. We will grab my paintbrush, paint off a line. If I change my brush color to red, let's see if it should, oh, come on. It did not change. Here's the reason why. Remember sometimes when you choose red and it goes automatically to grayscale? Have y'all run into that issue? If you do run into the issue, here's how to change it up. In your swatches palette, notice I don't have any of my default swatches. I'm going to open up my default swatches. We'll use my print swatches, all of these. Now if I choose one of these colors, hopefully it will, there we go, change to the color that I need. So if I need to paint in red, I can choose it from here. Open up your default swatches to test out that. Let's try a horizontal one, this thick one here. Got it created. When I make a new brush, art brush, notice that Illustrator automatically picked up on the direction of this brush. It changed it from vertical to horizontal. If I don't change my method, I'll keep it as none. And I go to paint with it. It'll make the line that I want, but if I go to change the color of it, it won't change the color at all. It'll keep it exactly the same regardless what my fill color is. The second thing you need to know, if you do need to make a change to your brush settings, let's say I did want to change that color method, double click on the art brush, it'll bring up your options, and from here is where you can make your changes that you want. When you say OK, it'll say, hey, do you want to leave the strokes? We're going to apply it to all the strokes. And so now that I changed the colorization method, I can change the color along with that. Pretty cool? So that's making the brushes. Once you've vectorized it, made the strokes that you want, I know some artists will create their entire palettes of brushes based on whatever they create. The next thing we need to do is to be able to save these brushes. I want to be able to open them up in other documents because we're going to place these in other things. Here's how you save your brushes. In your brushes palette, top right-hand side, choose, there we are, Save Brush Library. This will ask you to save your brush in some way. Now, the file format is going to be in an Adobe Illustrator file. Question? Yeah. Oh, okay. You were looking at me like, okay. We're going to save it as an Illustrator file. I'm going to call it Mr. Ivy's brush. We'll just say brushes. Mr. Ivy's brushes. I'll save it to my desktop and hit save. Everything else is good. It looks like a regular Adobe Illustrator file. There it is up there. But the brush library has been saved with that file format. So if I make a new file, File and New, and I want to import these into my brushes palette, here's how I can do it. Go up to the top again. We're going to open our brush library and find it under your other libraries. And this is where I can find the file that I created. It's on my desktop. There's Mr. Ivy's brushes.
Will that only be there for this one time, or will it be there forever?
It'll be there for this file that I have.
Okay.
If I save the file, it saves the brushes with the file.
Okay.
Yes. If you make a new file, it's not going to be part of the new
Okay,
file. You have to do it each time, load them up each time. Any questions so far on that? So that's the first part. Make your brushes, save your brushes as an Illustrator file. You can use them, take them with you forever. Here's the second part. This is the back of the page. Let's apply it to some actual lettering that we're going to work on. I want you guys to make a new Illustrator document. And this Illustrator document is going to have 3 artboards. The arrangement of them really doesn't matter, but I kind of like them to be side by side, so I'm choosing this one. Don't worry about the spacing, that's okay. And the size needs to be 5 inches by 5 inches. We'll say okay. And it'll look like this, 3 different places to work with. The second file that you downloaded are these graphic lettering. Let me pull this off. Folder. I've written out, actually my wife wrote this out, the word graphic design in a variety of different scripted styles. So it looks like this, this. Each one kind of has its pros, cons, just different ways of thinking about writing off the letters. We're going to break these down into their basic line shapes. So let's say I like this one. We'll work with this one. Let's place number 7 into this particular one. Oh no. Drag it in. That'll be the fastest way of doing it. Let's do another one. We'll do that one and just randomly place this one. Pick any 3 that you want. We can later go through and use these, change them up. And I'll place it on my area. I know that's kind of big, but we'll work with that. Each one on its separate one. Notice in my layers, here's how I like to trace things off. I've got those on layer 1. I can drop the opacity of each one of these. I can select them. In my transparency palette, it's where I can drop the opacity. Something where it just doesn't get in the way. So, 50% or so. And in layer 1, I'll lock that down. So I can't draw on it, I can't move it, but I can make a new layer, and this layer is what I'll do my tracing on. Make sense? Okay. One layer is the tracing layer, one layer is this one. From here, this is where I grab my pen tool or my pencil tool. Illustrator CC's got a new cool tool. I'll have to show you this one. But I like using the pen tool. And I'm going to trace off these letters. I'm not going to apply any of my brushes to them just yet. All I'm going to be worried about is just drawing off the lettering as best as I want to. You can clean these up. I'm going to go quickly for doing these vector letters. If you don't like using the pen tool, here's a new tool that they have. This is the curvature tool. With this one, huh?
It's my favorite.
Oh, it's your favorite. Yeah, if you hate using Bezier tools, this one's really good. This one will allow you to I'm not going to click and drag, just in a couple of clicks, follow along, and it gives you kind of a general idea, and it will round your curve, your tools for you. It takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it. If you're like me, you want a little more control. But very, very quickly you can get some curvy, nice looking lines. You can always get your direct selection tool, clean things up, and work within these as well. Here's what I'm looking for. Just draw basic lines. It doesn't look like much right now. Then we can load up our brushes and apply the brushes to here. And let's see, where's my brushes palette? Oh, I closed it out. There it is. I can select my G and apply a brush to it. Oh my goodness, it is huge. Why did it do that? Well, the reason why is because my original brush was that wide, that big. Even if I choose another one, it's really, really big. Check out the stroke size I'm working with. Even though it says 1 point, it's still measuring it by its original size. So actually, think of that as 100%. If I was to choose fraction of it, like 0.25, you can see now it's getting much, much smaller than I'm working with. So one thing you may want to do before you make your brushes, change the size of them to work with. But there's a brushed G that I can work with. If I want to apply it to the R and the A. Way too big. Make it a little bit smaller. I can even type in if I want to go smaller than that. And I've got an A that's been brushed off that size as well. The main thing is I'm playing around with the way those look. You can see now it's looking like I've brush lettered those out. Since it is vector, however, if I needed to change this up, I can always go in, move my lines around, and actually place them exactly where I wanted to go. Additionally, if I wanted to, I could add more lines to it. So I could maybe get my, let's open up my other brush palettes. Let's do ink. Hey, here's some ink stuff. I can add ink strokes to however I'm working. I can add more or less to it. Let's make them thicker. Y'all go away. I'm fine. Way too small. Little flourishes, little extra things that I'd want to work with. Like I said, I'm going very quickly to do these. Here's the final thing. Once you've added your brushes, you've traced off all of the letters that you want. So I would go through, maybe you could use your pencil tool and quickly redraw the letters. Well, there's D, E, S. Did a bad job. I. G and M. Basic lines. I can now select them and we'll apply a brush to whatever I have. Once I've applied the brush, now I've got design written off in a brush script. Doesn't look good, but I can still play around with this. Here's one way you can make it start looking a lot better. Here's other tools to play around with as well. When you make lines in Illustrator, like I said, the default mode is to make them just one particular thickness. Let's make it thicker so we can see what we're working with. Got too many palettes open. So here's one thickness of line. Another thing you can do is change your profile of this line. If you look in your stroke, next to your stroke, instead of uniform, here's some predefined profiles. If I was to choose the tapered one, it'll taper it off. So now the line starts off thin, gets thicker, and then gets thinner. Same way for the other profiles. You get an idea of what they would look like. So if I'm drawing off, say, the letter H, just with straight lines, I can select that, change their profile, and then I get a different looking H. Or I get a H that looks like this. I can actually change the way things would look from here. Let's take it a step further. I want to be able to customize it. I don't want to just use what's up here. I want to tell it exactly where I want it to be thicker or thinner. To do that, we're going to use this tool. This is your width tool. If you don't see it, it's hiding underneath all of your other warp tools. With the width tool, I can click along the line. You can see it'll actually create a little dot exactly where I'm at. When I click and drag, I can tell it how wide or thin I want it to be. So if I want my line to look like this, or to get a little bit thinner, then maybe flare out here at the end. Still a straight line, I can actually still move it around and use it. But now it's looking more like that. And I can apply this to a curved line as well. We'll make it thicker. Let me open up my stroke palette and make this a little bit easier. Grab your width tool, and I can tell it, hey, I want this to be thinner. Now the line will be thinned in with this one. If this is the kind of line that I want to apply over and over again, notice my profile is also changed. I can save it, open it up, and here's where, yeah, you can add to your profiles. We'll keep the default name. And now it's been added to the bottom of this one. I could go up here and apply it, say, to this particular line. Let's move it back. And that'll work from there. Pretty cool? Same thing for the brushes. So if I make a line and I apply one of my brushes to it, way too thick. Let's stretch that out. If I wanted this to taper, start off thin and then get thicker than thinner, and I apply it, now that is one type of brush that I can work with. If I wanted it to be curved, apply my brush to it, maybe make it a little bit smaller. Let's get it thin, thick to thin by changing the profile that I'm working with, and that gives me a different kind of setup as well. If you look at brush lettering, yeah, So here's examples. You've probably seen things like this. That's what I'm looking for. You've got thicker and thinner lines. You've got some that have the texture to it. And sometimes it gets thicker and thinner within the brushes that you're making. There's one right there. Thinner to thicker, thinner to thicker, thick to thin. And it all adds to that hand-drawn kind of feel. Here's a great way of doing it. So if you wanted a crayon to be tailed off this way, take the crayon texture, draw off thicker and thinner lines, and make the tail go exactly where you want it to go from here. What I want you guys to do is to pick any 3 of the graphic design things that are done, trace off the letters after you've created your brushes, and then redraw the letters from here. You can apply multiple brushes by just copying the letters on top of each other or around it, and design out the word graphic design 3 times. Cool? Okay, I'll turn it over to y'all and let y'all get started.